Okay.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone for this talk with His Great Shyamasundar Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for being with us.
Hare Krishna. Grüezi wohl to everyone in Switzerland. So
Wow.
nice to see you.
We are very honored and very happy to have you with us in this talk. We're having this interview on the occasion of 50th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's visit to the first visit to Switzerland. Prabhupada came in April 73 to Zurich and St.Moritz. That's 50 years ago, and of course we want to celebrate that. And as part of this celebration, we are very honored to have your association, and because you were that time traveling with Prabhupada. And of course, Shyamasundar Prabhu doesn't require much introduction in the devotee community. Shyamasundar Prabhu was the personal secretary for Srila Prabhupada for many years. He's the author of this amazing book, Chasing the Rhinos with the Swami, where he has shared also all his experiences. And of course, Shyamasundar joined Prabhupada very early in 67 in San Francisco, and then was together with his wife, with that time Melanie, and then Malati Madachi, traveling with 6 devotees to London, and was part of the magic that took place, meeting the Beatles and everything. And then also, as a secretary, came to Switzerland. So, and of course, we're very curious to hear your memories from your visit in Switzerland and Prabhupada's pastimes there. And of course, it would be nice also to understand how was it to be the personal secretary with Prabhupada, traveling around the world and being so close to a pure devotee. So, yeah, just curious and looking forward to hearing from you. Please, if you can share with us.
Thank you so much, Krishna Premarupa, for inviting me like this. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I always have considered Srila Prabhupada's 5-day visit to Zurich in April of 1973 as one of the most important episodes in my own life. And I've covered that 5 days thoroughly, as you said, in my book, volume 3 of Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, pages 204 to 212. And if you haven't seen the book yet, I think Damodar Prasad has ordered some copies from UK, and they will be there very soon. Anyway, this April 1 to 5-day 1973 period in Switzerland illustrates as much as any single episode in Srila Prabhupada's activities several of Srila Prabhupada's most amazing qualities. First and foremost, Srila Prabhupada is a man of action. From the earliest days with the Swami, he was our pirate chief. Yeah, from 1967 in San Francisco, and then on to London, and then India, and around the world with Srila Prabhupada. For 6 years, he was always my fearless pirate chief, the bold general to his ever-growing army. I think the main point you'll see here about Srila Prabhupada in my books, and in particular in this Zurich story, was Srila Prabhupada's sense of adventure, that life, devotional service, should be an adventure, full of excitement, risk. Dare the most for Krishna, and he will have to personally intervene to help you. Prabhupada taught us this from the very beginning days. And in this way, he said, you will get to see Krishna faster. He told us to chase the rhino for Krishna. And secondly, you'll see in this story that Srila Prabhupada is expert in every subject. In Zurich, you'll see him as a bold strokes as the expert businessman. You'll see him also as the most expert manager, holding together and expanding what is now a huge, almost corporate global enterprise. And all this without the instant communications we have today. And you'll see in this Zurich story his expertise at managing human resources, how he so swiftly understands the minds and abilities of his young and inexperienced team members. And he assigns and directs them to accomplishing the very best results for their efforts. And most of all, he watches out for their individual advancements in Krishna consciousness. You'll understand that Srila Prabhupada was the master of time, place, and circumstance. Nothing, no set of circumstances could catch Srila Prabhupada off guard. He was on top of every situation. And I think most of all in this Zurich story, you'll see and experience Srila Prabhupada's sense of cosmic fun. Every moment with Srila Prabhupada was a joyful moment, full of fun and laughter. So to give a little context to the Zurich story, as you mentioned, 1971 to 1973 was probably the most intense and busiest period of Srila Prabhupada's global expansion. America, Europe, Australia, India. By now, temples and devotees are well established in all these places. And he kind of wants to retire. He's 77 years old. He has his GBC. He has a dozen new sannyasis, but he needs to train them to take over, show them how it's done. So he spends this 1972, 73 years flying all over the world very quickly to train his sannyasis in management. In June of 1972, I had become Srila Prabhupada's personal secretary. Now, secretary by that time was more than just writing letters and making travel arrangements. The letters started pouring in, 5, 10, 20 letters a day. And so the secretary's job became like a clearinghouse for all of the strands of Prabhupada's worldwide activities. The first thing in the morning, Prabhupada, 6 o'clock in the morning, he would call me, Shyamasundar, take dictation. Letters was the first thing. There would be good news, there would be bad news, there would be questions. And Prabhupada dealt with each letter individually, point by point. So actually the secretary's job, I felt like more like I was a sounding board for Srila Prabhupada's ideas. He would bounce ideas back and forth. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? All day in Srila Prabhupada's busy schedule in those days, people were coming. Outside engagements. Each day was different. But Srila Prabhupada tried to maintain as much routine as possible, starting with letters in the morning. But there were always exceptions. We had to do this, we had to do that, we had to take off, we had to change something. And then don't forget the philosophy discussions. I don't know if you are aware, but starting in 1972, every morning at 8 o'clock, Srila Prabhupada wanted to discuss Western philosophers, and I would be the Western philosopher. I would study the night before on Plato or whoever the philosopher of the day was, and I would be that philosopher, and Prabhupada would rebut every argument I presented. We recorded all of these sessions. I forgot how many, there must be 50 sessions like this. Every philosopher from Plato up to the modern day existentialists. And these I've tried to summarize in my books, some of the most important of these discussions. So the secretary's job took on quite huge dimensions. It was a full-time position. Just an example, it brings to mind an example. For example, one night Prabhupada called me into his room and he said, you know, I've got invitations here from London, from New York, from Sydney, this place, that place. He said, and I've just received an invitation from Brahmananda in Nairobi. He said, where do you think we should go next? And knowing Prabhupada's love for adventure, I said, I think Nairobi, Prabhupada, you haven't been there yet. He said, yes, I was thinking the same thing. So, and one relevant note here, as I had spent many wonderful months in Switzerland myself as a young man, I often told Srila Prabhupada about Switzerland. And I encouraged him time after time to go there, especially for his health. So setting the scene for Switzerland, I had left as secretary for Srila Prabhupada in late January 1973. I was the GBC man for the UK, for England. So I returned there principally to accelerate the acquisition of Bhaktivedanta Manor. And by that time, Krishna consciousness was huge and expanding all over the UK, and they needed guidance. But the biggest problem was we had no money. We just got this huge estate in Hertfordshire, and we didn't have money for light bulbs. That was our biggest problem in England. So this leads up to the Swiss story. And I'll start reading from my book to give you an idea of the background for all of this. Not long after I was back at Berry Place, Dhananjaya came into my room, out of breath, saying that one devotee, this guy works as a teller at the Mitsubishi Bank on Ropemaker Street in the financial district. Anyway, this devotee had just told him a deep, dark secret, and he wasn't supposed to tell anyone. But here's the thing. On Monday, March 26, 1973, the government of Japan will legalize private ownership of gold up to 1 kilo. The price of gold will skyrocket on that day for sure. Why don't we? In October 1972, at Prabhupada's request, Rupanuga had wired $30,000 from New York to London for a down payment on a new building. That money had been sitting for 5 months in a Midland Bank savings account. And now that George Harrison had volunteered to buy us a place, we didn't really need it. So we came up with a plan. Even cautious Dhananjaya conceded that we couldn't miss as he handed me 10,000 pounds in thick packets of Bank of England 20-pound notes. So I packed my briefcase with cash, put on my best clothes, which in those days meant a nice dhoti and a bright vest and kurta. And I flew to Zurich to buy gold. When I got to Zurich, I looked in the phone book to find the largest advertisement for banks, to see which bank had the biggest advertisement. And I saw a Swiss credit bank on Bahnhofstrasse. Those days, I don't remember, I don't know if you remember, I don't think so. You were probably too young, but there was a character in the movies called James Bond. And James Bond movies were the most popular movies in the world at that time. And James Bond was this character, this Britishman who went around the world on daring adventures for king and country. So I kind of adopted a James Bond persona on this trip to Zurich, adopting Srila Prabhupada's pirate way of devotional service. daring the most for Krishna, expecting that Krishna has to personally interfere to help me. And I opened a Swiss Credit Bank gold bullion account in US dollars. Seated in a comfortable room with his immaculate suit and polished English, Herr Schreiber exuded the ease, security, and precision exclusive to Swiss bankers. You feel almost privileged to be in their hallowed presence. He assured me that any gold bullion I purchased would be held in their vaults, and yes, you may sell it or take possession of it at any time you like. The price at the moment was $81.70 per ounce. But we sell only in 1 kilo bars, he said. Okay, I said. How much gold can I get for about $23,000 or $24,000? By end of that March 22nd day, Krishna had paid $23,638.10 to own 9 kilos or 289.328 troy ounces of 999.9 fine gold bars. The next day, Friday, I sat all day in the lobby of Swiss Credit Bank with a dozen other curious citizens, watching new tech red digital readouts flash past on a long black wall screen, stock and commodity prices. By the end of the day, the price of gold had jumped to $84.50 an ounce. I thought, wow, we made more than $800 today doing nothing. So here's where Srila Prabhupada comes into the story.
So could we say that there was kind of two reasons that Prabhupada came to Switzerland? One was because you had told him about a nice place for his health, but at the same
time, I'll read you'll get the whole story in what I read next.
Okay.
Meanwhile, news of what I was doing had been leaked to Prabhupada,
that's the second.
Who had arrived in India from Jakarta earlier in March and was now in Bombay. Shyamasundar has taken the society's money and is in Zurich speculating on gold. When I phoned Jai Hari in London one evening for my daily briefing, he told me that Prabhupada had cabled London and wanted to come immediately to Switzerland. I phoned Prabhupada at Kartikeya Mahadevi's house in Bombay and assured him that we're making a lot of profit on this gold, Prabhupada. It's not just a wild gamble. I will come there, he said, and we shall see. And what about the manor? When will it be ready? I said, we're hoping to move out there soon, Prabhupada, maybe in a couple of weeks. Meanwhile, I think you would enjoy a nice vacation in the Swiss Alps, Prabhupada, like we've talked about many times. How much time shall I book in a nice hotel for you? Prabhupada said, I shall stay 10 days. Then I may go to London. Or if you are not ready there, I will go to New York. I was so excited. Another major rhino chase with my pirate commander. I phoned Jai Hari in London and said, you'd better come over here right away and help me arrange things. I then sent a telegram to Srila Prabhupada in Bombay. Obeisances, stop. Inform arrival details, care of Hotel Schweizerhof, Bahnhofplatz, Zurich. So the next day, Srila Prabhupada arrived. The next day, Sunday, April 1st, through tear-filled eyes, I watched Prabhupada walk through the Ankunft gate at Kloten Airport with Shrutakirti and Prajumna. The past 2 months without him, the longest we'd been apart for nearly 2 years, had only increased my love for him. I made prostrate obeisances and laid a costly Italian gardenia garland around his neck. Prabhupada was happy to see me too, I could tell. There was that special glint of looming adventure in his eyes. But he had a stern look on his face as he said, "So, what is the position?" I assured him that Krishna's money was safe. In fact, we've made a few thousand already, Srila Prabhupada, and we can sell the moment the price starts to drop. It's Sunday, the banks are closed today, so Jai Hari will escort you guys to St.Moritz, and I'll drive up there after the market closes tomorrow. Your train leaves in an hour. As I steered the big rented Mercedes through downtown Zurich, I sensed that Prabhupada was a little disgruntled to be shuttled away from the action. But mollified by my repeated assurances that St. Moritz has the healthiest climate in Europe, "You can get a good rest, Srila Prabhupada." He put himself in our hands and boarded the train at Hauptbahnhof for a scenic 4-hour trip to the famous Swiss health resort. So Srila Prabhupada's off to St. Moritz. The next morning, Monday morning, there were torrential rains in Zurich. The rain was just pouring down. So I called Shrutakirti up in St. Moritz, and he told me that it was snowing heavily. He said there were 1 or 2 feet of snow already, and that Srila Prabhupada was unhappy. So I took that big car and I tried to drive up there. I left Zurich in late afternoon. It was getting dark already. I went up Highway 3, the fastest route from Zurich to St. Moritz, but it was closed at Chur. The police had blocked the road because the pass at Lenzerheide was closed. So I drove back around through Feldkirch, Austria, and up over the Arlberg Pass, up through the Inn River Valley. It took me 11 hours. And I arrived at St. Moritz at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's now 3 o'clock in the morning and too early to pound on Prabhupada's door. I curl up in the dark carpeted hallway and fall into exhausted sleep. Tap, tap, something is tapping my leg. My eyes fly open. "Ah, it is our Shyamasundar. You have come for your vacation," says Prabhupada, laughing and holding his cane, bundled in cap and shawl, wisps of vapor coming from his mouth. "You will join us for a morning walk in the hallway?" Laughing so hard his eyes are closed. "Okay, Prabhupada, your impetuous fool is busted again." We walk up and down the corridor, pushing the light switch each time we reach the end of the hall. The lights are on a 3-minute timer. And Prabhupada jokes about the weather. "Just see," he says, "they will pay so much money to come to this hellish place, thinking to enjoy the bitter cold." He wants to leave. There's no talking him out of it. So we make a plan. Jai Hari will book Prabhupada and his entourage on the mid-morning train back to Zurich, and I will race back through Austria with the car, find hotel rooms, and pick them up this afternoon at the Zurich train station. So I picked them up at the Hauptbahnhof, Bahnhofstrasse, and the Swiss Credit Bank was just a few blocks from the train depot and directly en route to our rooms at Hotel Sonnenberg. So Prabhupada wanted to stop at the bank first and check out the action. We were a strange-looking lot as we entered the lobby and sat down in a row of chairs. Is that a Swami from India? Those 4 young men, they must be his disciples. People tried not to stare, but you could see even the cosmopolitan Swiss were blown away by the sight of us. We watched the red on black digital display roll by high on the wall. These are stock prices, Srila Prabhupada. The plus or minus after each price indicates the current increase or decrease. Now we're coming to the commodities, you see, metals. Prabhupada saw it first. Gold, $89.70. It has increased today by 45 cents. By now, it was the afternoon of April 3rd, and as we sat and watched the screen for nearly 2 hours, Prabhupada seemed mesmerized by the red electronic numerals flashing by. This was a whole new, daring alliance with Prabhupada as business partners, throwing the dice, giving each other excited looks like, the price just went up 10 cents. Long silences, watching the ticker, thrill building, a shared moment of pleasant intensity best left unsaid. I'd been on 100 rhino chases with the Swami, but this was a first and more exotic field. As colleague, his partner in this wild deal, apprentice to the master businessman, and I was extraordinarily happy. So after the bank closed that day, we went up to the Sonnenberg, and Prabhupada settled in his rooms there. Waiting at the hotel were 3 of Prabhupada's GBC men, Hansaduda, who'd come from Hamburg, Bhagavan from Paris, and even Bali Mardan had shown up from New York City. They'd heard that Srila Prabhupada was in Zurich, gambling on gold with the notorious Shyamasundar, and they'd flown in to see what was going on. Up in his room, Prabhupada was glad to see his frontline generals, and they caught him up on ISKCON's affairs in their various zones. But there was tension in the air, and finally the topic of gambling, one of the 4 forbidden activities of Vaishnava life, was raised. Their disapproval showed as they sat around and took pot shots at me, criticizing my outrageous behavior. Prabhupada listened to everything they said, seeming to agree with them, then asked me to leave the room. My heart fell. My chest seized up. I left, but I kept the door ajar a few inches and leaned in close to overhear Prabhupada say, yes, this purchasing of gold for speculation is a gambling business. You should not do it. You cannot do it. But Shyamasundar, he knows the art. He may do it. Thanks, Prabhupada. My heart swelled with love for my pirate chief defending me in this way. Heart pounding, I feigned no emotion as the men slowly filed out, casting befuddled glances as I studied my fingernails. After they'd left for their rooms, I crept back into Prabhupada's room and sat down with one eyebrow raised. So, he said, tomorrow we must sell the gold. They are objecting. Apart from that, price seems to be staying the same. So the next day, on the morning of April 4th, we returned to the Swiss Credit Bank lobby, watching the price display for an hour or so as gold continued to hover at $90 an ounce. Then Prabhupada rose and said, I want to open one account here. We shall sell the gold and put into my account. Herr Schildknecht was very impressed by Prabhupada's presence and graciously opened a US dollar checking account in the favor of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Herr Schreiber sold our gold at $89.75 a troy ounce and credited Srila Prabhupada's new account with $25,967.17, a profit of $2,329.07, nearly 10% in just 12 days. I never knew what happened to that $26,000. Prabhupada probably used it to print books or put it toward a new ISKCON center somewhere. His new Swiss credit bank checkbook disappeared into his little white case, but often, years later, he would pull it out and show it, saying, "I have got my Switzerland bank account." So that's the story. Pretty much Prabhupada left for New York the next day. But if we go back to some of the points that I discussed earlier, we can see how this few days in Switzerland so perfectly describes some of Srila Prabhupada's amazing qualities and abilities. First, the boldness of his actions. He's taking risks for Krishna to call on his protection. Srila Prabhupada was the pirate chief. He just flew to Zurich on a moment's notice, and he didn't like to be sidelined to St. Moritz. He wanted to dive into the gold market. He was always a man of quick, bold decisions. He saw devotional service as adventure. And secondly, Srila Prabhupada was expert in everything. Krishna consciousness is a practical business. He always said that. He was the master of everything practical. I'd seen this so many times. In my first meeting with Srila Prabhupada in 1967, I thought I was going to learn about God when I sat down in his room. And the first thing he told me, he said, "The most important thing is that you must know bookkeeping." Practical. Srila Prabhupada had told me some things about his business life. Over the years, he had many businesses and lots of experience in business, banking. And over the years with him, I had seen him negotiate contracts with, for example, Dynapan in Tokyo. I'd seen him fight months-long legal battles with Mr. Nair in Bombay, expert at rebutting every argument. I probably sat, I would say, hundreds of business negotiations with Srila Prabhupada. I mean, after all, from renting a temple premises to printing and selling books, raising money, everything in spreading Krishna consciousness is a business negotiation. And Srila Prabhupada was the master. Shyamasundar, gold price has just gone down 14 cents. Let us wait 15 minutes. If it keeps going down, let us sell. Like that. And Srila Prabhupada was so is expert in managing human resources. This Zurich incident, Shyamasundar is gambling the society's funds. How he appeased his GBC leaders, but allowed me to carry on. So decisive and strong, but so kind. He managed these huge affairs with a strong but gentle brush. Now, sometimes people ask me, did Prabhupada ever get angry with devotees? And this touches on the subject of time, place, and circumstance. For example, during this period of time, the 70s, many of Srila Prabhupada's early disciples were Vietnam vets, machine gunners, soldiers, guys from New York like Tamal Krishna, tough guys. So yeah, sometimes Prabhupada, depending on the time, the place, and the circumstance, he got angry with these guys. He would get angry and say something because this is what they needed. And these boys were strong enough to take that criticism and grow with it. Excuse me. But me, if Prabhupada ever said an angry word to me, I think I would curl up in a ball and maybe die. He was so merciful to me. He never got angry with me. This is time, place, and circumstance. This is where I bring this up and caution devotees against, well, Srila Prabhupada said this, Srila Prabhupada said that. He might say one thing to one audience, and 10 minutes later say just the opposite to another audience. So understanding Srila Prabhupada is always a matter of time, place, and circumstance, the audience. And don't forget, the most important aspect of life with Srila Prabhupada is fun, laughter. Being with Srila Prabhupada was a constant, rollicking comedy. Oh, so you have come to St. Moritz for your vacation? He jokes as cold mist flies from his laughing mouth. He always said that Krishna consciousness is a voluntary business, he would say, and devotees should always be joyful. Once I asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, what is the meaning of laughter? What is the definition of laughter? And he thought a moment and he said, laughter is the difference between what you expect will happen and what really happens. It's surprise, right? Laughter is surprise. We laugh when we're surprised. So life in Krishna consciousness should be a constant surprise and thus full of laughter. So I guess in summary, I would describe this short 5-day story in Switzerland to be the perfect story in a way. It illustrates very strongly that Srila Prabhupada is without any error. He is the perfect person. The only other equivalent I can think of as a encapsulated story, a 5-day episode, is the 5 days that Srila Prabhupada spent in Moscow in June of 1971, when he planted the seed that transformed the Soviet Empire. So you had asked me also, Krishna Premarupa, you had asked me about the Swiss watch that I gave Srila Prabhupada. Well, going back, I had gone 1 year to college in Switzerland back in 62, 63. And I had come to really love Switzerland. I knew it also as a place of crisp and well-defined business and financial practices. And by early 1973, I recently become the sole world distributor for a new ruby mine in India. And that's another story, also inspired by Srila Prabhupada. And that's also described in volume 3. So I had all these rough rubies, practically a ton of them. And I had no experience in the gem business whatsoever. So I thought, well, where's the best place to do business? Where shall I set up my business center? And I thought, Zurich, of course. So initially I set up my first business with the rubies in Zurich. It was the perfect place for international banking transfers of money. And there was a tax-free Freilager at Kloten Airport for storing the rough rubies without paying taxes. There was a gem cutting industry in nearby Idar Oberstein in Germany. And it was close to the markets in London and Antwerp and other places. So I stayed on in Zurich after Srila Prabhupada left for New York. I was managing my ruby business. I'll tell you about the Swiss watch now. Back in early April, right after Srila Prabhupada had left Zurich for New York, I'd seen a window display at Herr Gublein's fancy boutique on Bahnhofstrasse for the quartz digital watch, a brand new concept. You pushed a button on the watch, and a pulsar LED chip displayed the time in red electronic digits on a black background, just like the stock price display at Swiss Credit Bank that had so intrigued Prabhupada the week before. A limited edition of 1,000 watches had been specially prepared for Gubelein at $500 a piece. I thought, wow, I gotta have one of these for Prabhupada. It would look so cool on his wrist. In June 1973, the James Bond film Live and Let Die would feature Roger Moore reaching his bare arm around the blonde head of his gorgeous lover and punching the button on his watch, and the world would see time as a red digital readout, changing timepiece history forever. So at Bhaktivedanta Manor in the summer of 1973, I gave Prabhupada the watch. The band was loose on his wrist, clunky, but he wore it, constantly pushing the button to see the illuminated display, like a kid with a new toy. So he said, now it takes two hands to tell the time instead of one, he said, demonstrating his new watch to everyone who came to his room. Srila Prabhupada, the global trendsetter. So I think I've covered your questions. Do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I think you covered all what I had prepared. Of course, if you have anything else to share in regards to these memories, but I think you covered everything wonderfully. And it's yeah, thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing these moments and memories with us.
It's my pleasure. I hope to come over and see you personally someday. Maybe even have a ski up at St.Moritz. I have one final thing I thought I had was looking back on all of this. Imagine you're 20-something years old and you're introduced to a 70-something years old person with the energy of Superman, and a man who possesses the most ancient wisdom and seems to know everything and more, one who loves to laugh and do the same things you like to do, like explore and take risks and to see what's new and exciting just over the next hill. Wouldn't you also follow this perfect person? Thank you so much, Krishna Premananda. So you're celebrating this week, or when is your?
Yeah, we're celebrating this weekend. And
how many devotees are there in Zurich?
I mean, there's a couple of hundred members in the congregation.
Oh, nice.
Right. I mean, we will see how many come for the festival, but I'm sure it will be for all those who will join. It will be an unforgettable experience.
Oh, that's really good news. Yeah, I mean, how could I imagine walking down those streets as a young man, knowing that this would happen in my lifetime? I'm just so pleased. I was thinking in those days about, in those days I would say 1962, I was studying physics in college. But at that time, Switzerland, when I came to Switzerland in college there, I switched my thinking from physics to philosophy.
Oh.
That was the beginning. And to see now that you guys have a temple there for Krishna, it makes my life worthwhile. Thank you so much.
We would be it would be wonderful to host you and personally meet you here in Zurich. So
I'd love to come.
Please do visit us.
I will come if Krishna willing. And I'm already 81 years old. It's getting harder. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Shyamasundar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you. I hate to leave. Shall I leave? Can I leave?